Welcome to Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond, a masterclass series in which we're integrating mindset, nutrition, training, recovery. I am Danielle Emmons, owner of Element Sports Coaching, and I have the incredible Danielle Emmons with me today. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm so glad that you said yes. So let me tell everyone a little bit about who you are. You are a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and what your focus is really helping busy women, aka female athletes, to ditch the diets and lose weight for good with a simple and effective approach to weight loss. And while your focus is not directly on female athletes, I was really drawn to what you do and your message and who you are because of this idea of ditching diets. And what I would like to just get into right off the bat is why nutritional science has just changed so much in the past couple of decades, like phenomenally. And we feel like, we've had so many turns over of different approaches. And I'm curious as to why you have come forward with this approach and what have you seen in it with your own clients by taking it?
Right. So absolutely. One thing that I noticed was just friends and family, coworkers, all trying to lose weight and trying all these different diets, like the keto diet or low carb diet, whole food diets, all these different, diets out there, 30, what is it called? 30 whole food or whatever. And what I found was that if they even lost weight, they tend to gain it back and more. And then they felt like the diets failed them, that they failed the diet, but really the diets failed them, because the diets are doing exactly what they say they're going to do. You're going to lose weight, but they don't tell you how to maintain that. It's not sustainable. It's too restrictive. So most people just end up gaining the weight back and more often. So I just felt like it was, something that was just kind of bothering me, and something that it was just like really in my heart, that I wanted to help people to be able to see how to eat properly and still lose weight and still be able to eat all the foods that you love, including all the nutritious foods, and be able to fit it into their lifestyle rather than the opposite. I also found that, with the example of the keto diet, many people that I had talked to, clients and potential clients, had done the keto diet, lost the weight, but then here they are with high cholesterol or high blood pressure, heart disease, because they're eating all this high fat foods. And a lot of them aren't doing it the way, they're not eating all these healthy fat foods. They're eating like bacon and sausage and, all these foods that are unhealthy. So, that's kind of just the rundown of why I, became passionate about helping people ditch the diets and learn how to properly eat for the long term.
So by diet, you mean a particular way of eating that is often restrictive in terms of what you eat. Is that kind of the definition that?
Correct. Yeah. And just there's so many diets out there that are just so restrictive. I mean, you hear of like even, liquid diets or fasting for 48 hours or, none of that is good for your body in the long term. Yeah, sure. You might look like you lost weight on the scale, but what are you losing? Muscle, water weight. Yeah.
A lot of water. Can you just, okay, I don't know, tell me, so that is what I see so often, is that there's so much excitement when you first start this diet, and maybe this is what you see, but so much of it is that water weight that is first coming off. And then all of a sudden it goes like 2 days later, the weight comes back. Is that the typical, like what happens when these things like when you get into a diet that is restrictive of carbohydrates, for example? I mean, that's a big one that, you see a lot of water weight loss.
Yeah, because carbs hold water. So that's why they're losing the weight so quickly, or so they think they're losing the weight, but they're losing water first. So the minute they go, they're also restricting carbs. So your body's like, wait a minute, I need those carbs. So it slows down its metabolism. And, when they eat a little, they eat a little bit more, they eat a carb, then the weight comes back right back on and then some, because it's your body's like, let me hold on to this. And the diet misconception is that your body, will store or will use its stored fat for energy in times of deprivation. But instead, your body will actually break down muscle for fat. So dieting and deprivation actually causes your body to hold onto the stored fat and burn your muscle, which is, of course, not what we want. And that's why dieting results in a slower metabolism, or one of the reasons.
Can you just say that again? Because I just want to really hone in on that point. I think it's really, really important. Okay, so we have this idea that when we restrict carbohydrates, that we're actually going to start burning fat. And then you said, but no, that's not what's actually happening, people. It's actually that your body is going to go and start breaking down the muscle.
Right.
Why doesn't it go to fat? Like, is that too much? I don't know if that's a fair question, but like, is that too science? Maybe I don't have to get into that, but it's exactly what athletes and, we've been taught to think or know about. Is like, okay, well, you can go and exercise in a fasted state, because then your body is going to start burning fat as a resource rather than, anything, like it's not going to have access to carbohydrates. So is there a difference there? And it's been proven, I should just finish off by saying it's been proven that for female athletes, this is not necessarily a good strategy, and particular if you want to hit any sort of high intensity, because what do you need to do when you want to hit a high intensity, which is anything above aerobic? You need to have sugar so that you can actually do it. Otherwise, you're going to be in that aerobic state, not neat, like it's just not going to be churning. Is there anything that else, like that's a really important thing to note? Because as we struggle to in perimenopause and beyond, we're struggling to maintain our muscle mass already.
Right.
Let's not make it harder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what I was referring to was when you're not eating enough calories, when you're not eating, you're eating in a deprivation.
Yeah.
That's when your body will use the muscle instead of the fat, because fat is, it has the highest calorie per gram, 9 calories per gram of, and so that's the highest versus, the carbohydrate and the protein. So it's going to hold on to the thing that it has the most of in deprivation. So that's when you're depriving yourself of calories.
Right. Is there, okay, so that's why we actually hold on to the fat rather than start using the fat, because it's like, hold on, everybody, we've got to hold on to this because we don't know when we're going to get it next. And that's the starvation mode that our body goes into.
Yes, absolutely. And also when you are in a deprivation, your body's in eating less calories than it needs, your cortisol levels go up. So that causes you to hold on to more fat, especially around the abdominal area.
It's one of the biggest challenges we have as female athletes. And I know we were just talking on before we started recording, and, female athletes in perimenopause and beyond have like 2 primary challenges. One is that the drop in estrogen is, as it goes down, there's other receptors of estrogen that are kind of like, oh man, we gotta get more, so that our bodies are actually super, super normal, that a lot of female athletes are like gaining, just females in general, it doesn't have to be athletes, but females gain 10 to 15 pounds, which sucks for a lot of people because they like the way they feel in their body. It has nothing to do with the gaining of weight. It just is that all of a sudden their body has changed, and they unwillingly, they were just like, hey, that's not fair. Why is this going on? So then the second major issue is that, as female athletes, we're not eating enough, and we're in that restrictive state, and we're not understanding how that is impacting us. So it's like this double-edged sword. We're like gaining this weight just because our body's trying to manage it. And then we start getting restrictive and then it just gets worse.
Right. Absolutely.
And yeah.
So I was going to say, to answer that, like the goal is really to create a homeostasis or balance in our body by stabilizing our blood sugar. So when nutrition is used to create that balance, the body will release what it doesn't need, right? So it will release excess sodium, toxins, stored body fat. And the balance in the body optimizes like cell reproduction, such as energy, focus, sleep, stress management, and also the amount of lean body mass that you have, right? Mm-hmm. So when your body's not in that balance, such as with dieting or not eating adequate amount of food, including like fats or healthy fats, proteins, and carbs, it creates an unstable blood sugar. So when the blood sugar is low, it shifts your body into a panic state and it begins breaking down muscle again for energy. So then you crave sugar, you crave carbohydrates, you eat something high in carbs or sugar, or you drink a soda, or you're like, there's some M&Ms there and you just grab them because you're starving. And again, your blood sugar goes up and spikes your insulin and stores the rest of it as fat. Sorry, that was a mouthful.
Yeah, no, it's so perfect. Okay. So what are some of the things that we can do to manage our blood sugar then, and to like keep it so it's enabling our body to adapt?
Yeah. So ideally it's best to eat every 3 to 4 hours to maintain that blood sugar homeostasis.
Yeah.
And trying to eat, during the day, I'm not talking about before training, but eating a protein, a carb, and a fat, every 3 to 4 hours will really help maintain that blood sugar level.
All three of them.
Yeah. All three of them. Yeah. Or even just, if you can do a protein and a carb, or a healthy fat and a carb, at least, you're slowing down that digestive process. So you're not, you're feeling fuller for a longer period of time.
Right. Because it takes longer for your body to digest a protein and a fat as opposed to a straight up carbohydrate M&M.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So, so that's super helpful. So now we are fueling more frequent, or like, not, I call it fueling. We're nourished. How about we nourish our bodies every 3 hours?
Fueling's good too.
Fueling is good. And then we're going to fuel, because I talk about like nourish our bodies and fuel for performance. So now we're going to think about fueling for our training, and what sort of things can we think about for that? So, first of all, a lot of people, if they eat too close to, going to do a workout, they start to get like a stomach upset, or it just doesn't really feel good. So what are some of the things that we need to think about right before we train that will help us have the energy, but not kind of spike our blood sugar? So we kind of have that right beforehand.
Right. So ideally, you would want to eat at least 30 or 60 minutes before a workout. Mm-hmm. You want to try to eat foods that are high in healthy carbohydrates, low in fats, so it's easier to digest. Mm-hmm. Some options could be bananas, oats, toast, potatoes, anything like higher in carbohydrates, quinoa, rice.
Oh yeah, like all those things. Those are super. And like quinoa has both the protein and the carb. Like it was great. Potatoes. Yeah. I think it's like the revival of the potato. I think we need to think and give more ode to the potato. Can you just tell us like what else is amazing about a potato? Because I know when I was like maybe in my 20s or something, like I steered away from potatoes because I thought, I don't know, I was doing a low carbohydrate. I have done like it all. I've done low fat, low carb, low food, just no food. Like that's just of the things. But anyways, I digress. Like, we all have, right? I just remember going through this low fat craze with the world, yes, or at least with North America. And it just like right through my teens into my 20s, like the worst time you could possibly do it at the highest level of activity. But I digress. Let's talk about potatoes. So what is so good about these darn little, like especially those ones that are roasted with salted on them, and then you bake them, and then you have these, you can just like pop them in your mouth. It's a great travel food. as well in the back pocket of a bike jersey. I'm just pointing out, but in any case, tell us about the potato.
What can I say about potatoes? They are high in potassium, so that's great, because your body is, needs that sodium and potassium, whatever the electrolytes as you're training.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make them in so many different ways, right? So there's the sweet potato and the regular potatoes, and like you said, cutting them up and putting salt on them and baking them. I'm not talking French fries.
Oh,
but
darn it.
once in a while, you gotta have those once in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many good things about potatoes and so many different ways that you can make them to make it more exciting,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So tell us a couple, okay, so now our blood sugar, can you talk about the blood sugar before we sleep as well? So we know sleep is a big issue for a lot of athletes in perimenopause and beyond. So we know to now ensure that we eat like about 3 hours before we go to bed. Do you have any suggestions for us how we manage that blood sugar level, like going into the evening, and then what's happening through the evening as we go into a fasted state?
Okay. As far as, so you said that athletes are supposed to not eat 3 hours before they go to bed.
Well, this is the idea of, this is an idea that was supposed to help us sleep better, potentially. Now, then there's some that suggest that we should have a little snack with a protein right before we go to bed. So, I mean, depends on the line of thinking that you have. What is your knowledge and research show?
Yeah, I actually believe that you should have a snack before bedtime, because it's helping you maintain that homeostasis longer, because it's a big gap from when you go to bed or, eat 3 hours before you go to bed and the morning time. So ideally, you want to have a snack of a carb and a protein, or a carb and a fat, or all three, maybe an hour before you go to bed.
Right.
And then in the morning, you want to try to eat like within the first hour of waking up. So then you're maintaining that blood sugar stabilization.
So amazing. And I think that this is what people get confused about, to be straight, is that there's so many different ways of am I supposed to not eat before or not? And, getting the confusion of the messaging of, well, at the end of the day, what's working for you, I suppose. True. Where do you feel your best? So how do you work with your clients to come to that position in which it's like, okay, we know all these theories are out there, these diets are out there, these sure, it works for some people. Yes, intermittent fasting is the best thing ever for so many people, and it's worked for them, and whatever it is that it's worked for. How do you help them through some of these issues? Or is it more of, this is your approach and this is what you've seen works for your clients, and therefore let's see if it works for you? How do you deal with that, the noise that's around you on ditching diets?
Yeah. So, I do have my approach, but it doesn't work. It's not that it doesn't work for everyone, but it doesn't work for maybe their lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're just like, I'm not going to eat a snack at night, or I'm not going to do this or that. Then we come up with other things that do work for them, because everybody's different. Everybody's, an individual. They have a different lifestyle. They have, some have kids and they're racing around. Some are working full time. Some are not. So I always work with them on a customized approach to them. So we try things, it's like trial and error. That didn't work. Okay, it's not working for you. Let's try this instead. Mm-hmm. So, there is the science, there's, what we should do, and then there's reality. So we try to find a middle ground. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. So in the approach, there's the theory of maintain a body's homeostasis, eat frequently every 3 hours or so, make sure you're fueling with carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And from there, we look at, okay, how was your energy? I'm just summarizing to see if I'm like understanding. So people can say, okay, this is how I weave myself through this diet culture. and understand how to manage the noise, because I think it's really hard. It's really hard. And as somebody that's constantly in the conversation with my athletes about nutrition, it's a hard thing, because I'm like, well, what about this intermittent fasting? And what about this? Yeah, research is really, I can prove both ways. I can find a paper that shows that it works. I can find something that shows that it works. So what you're suggesting, as in the approach that you take as an individual, you have to look at both, this approach of managing your blood sugars, keeping homeostasis, lowering the stress on your body, and then moving forward to, now how do we make it work within your lifestyle? So it's not a diet at any point, and that it's something that you can incorporate and feel good at the end of the day.
Right. And also, I like to say, if you can't do something forever, why do it at all? So if they want to do intermittent fasting, and then, it's a Saturday and or you could go on vacation, and then that all goes out the window, what's going to happen? You're probably going to gain weight because you've adjusted that. So if you can find something that can work for you forever, for the long term, that's really what you want to look for. That's really what they should be doing. Does that make sense? If you can't do it forever,
Totally. No, it totally makes sense. I think it's super important to think about. It's like, because again, that's coming into your theory, into your philosophy of, let's take the least stressful approach to our body.
Yes.
And if you're shifting all the time, your body is working for you to shift it as well.
Yes. It wants to get back to homeostasis.
Right. So if something like, right now, to be really honest, I eat with my children quite early. We eat 5:30 or 6. And then I don't often have a snack at night before I go to bed, which is at 9. Like, I go to bed super early. And then I kind of eat a tiny bit with the kids as I'm running around, but it's often not until 8 o'clock the next day that I'm, actually sitting down, and I have to have protein in the morning. But it is almost like an intermittent fasting light, because it's just like, that's just the way it works. And I feel good, but that's what happens every single day.
Yes. And that's your natural, the way you do it naturally. And if that works for you, then great. Why change it? It's not broken.
Right. So it comes a lot down to, let's find what can work for you, and where you feel good in your body, and where you have energy to take on what you want to take on.
Absolutely. Really. Yeah. Yep. Instead of trying to follow in this rigid diet fad, of whatever. I use keto a lot, but, and keto works for some people, and keto is good for certain, diagnoses. So I can't say that it's bad, but it's just one where you really have to cut out all those carbs. And how sustainable is that, really?
Well, and it's not really advisable for athletes, and particularly for female athletes. Sure. Like, how in the world are you going to hit an intensity if you're running on ketones? And I mean, that will save that debate for another day. And if you have thoughts on that, I encourage you to share them. I love the debate. I love the debate. I think it's an important thing that we come into a space of saying, yeah, and it worked and it didn't work, and this is right for my body. But I think that's the most important thing, is that we have the information we need. And this is part of the series, is that we have the information we need, so we can be curious, we can investigate, we can find a philosophy that aligns with our own. And like with you and your work with your clients, it's a philosophy of, let's eat real food, let's eat often, let's eat and make it work for us every single day, rather than on a, get through the next 20 days of this cleanse or something like that. It is not along the lines that I'm so with you. Okay. Is there anything else that I'm missing that I need to, that you wanted to share in in something that you're passionate about before I ask you the rapid fire questions?
I feel like we covered a lot.
I really do. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to ask you the rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Give us one moment of courage.
One moment of courage. I'm going to say, when my daughter was going through a really, really rough time, in school and, being bullied as a first grader, and the school's not listening, and her behavior just kind of going down the drain. She was just this quiet, sweet, girl. And all of a sudden she's throwing things and kicking, and the school didn't, they just focused on her behavior. And I was like, no, there's something, there's a reason for this. It's not just her behavior. And, I went through 2 therapists and, finally got her tested and figured out she was dyslexic, had some ADHD. And, that was a fight. I mean, that was courageous of me, because I was being told by medical professionals, by the school, that, that it was her behavior. And she was, I think what they call her, oppositional defiant or something like that.
Of course they've characterized it.
They do. Yeah.
Oh
they
my
did.
goodness.
Basically just, she was a defiant child and that we needed to discipline her more, which did not work. So what we found was that she was struggling. And so, it took courage for me to really fight, because I'm not that kind of person. I don't like confrontation, right? So I had to fight the school. I had to fight the doctors or the therapist, and go the way that I thought, what we should do, and not give up until I found the solution, which we finally did. And she's thriving and doing amazing. It took a long time, but that was my courage moment.
What a perfect example of what we need to take in as perimenopausal athletes. When we know that there's something wrong, and we have to fight the system. I'm always so shocked that the doctor, I don't want to give doctors a hard rap, because they are put under incredible pressure to have such an enormous and extensive, education on
Absolutely.
all things.
Yes.
So I'm talking predominantly about general practitioners that we go visit that are way too busy as it is, at least here in Canada. And so I don't want to come in on hard on them, but we really it's a perfect example of how we have to navigate and advocate for ourselves in a system that might want to pinpoint something and be like, no, there's nothing wrong, or it's going to be this. And that we have to keep looking to the stories where we had immense curiosity to find out the real reason. So amazing. I'm so glad that your daughter is thriving. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Give us one thing you're curious about right now.
So I would say this is probably something that we're all curious about is, when is this COVID, 19 going to end? It seems like we're just getting more and more, what do you call it? Like the Delta variants, different variants. And, it's just, who knows? I mean, hopefully kids stay in school and hopefully it gets better, but we need to get back to normal life. And I just hope that, that comes sooner than later. So that's something I'm definitely very curious about. And I guess only time will tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a big thing that is impacting us all. And I think for this audience, I think where we go is to really have compassion for each other right now as we manage and try to deal with this just mentally of what is this and how do we navigate? Is there a back to normal? Is it, for a lot of people, we don't want to go back to normal, and this is all bringing an immense amount of change. And so yeah, it's big, and it's really big. What are you grateful for right now?
I'm grateful to be I guess I could say a positive thing on COVID is that I'm grateful to be with my family more. I'm working from home, being there for my kids, and, my husband works from home too. So that's been really nice, because before I was out working and, working long hours and coming home at 5 or 6 at night, and it was just chaos, homework and dinner and baths and bedtime. And so now I'm just grateful to be around for my kids. And, that happened because of COVID. So I have to be thankful for that. There's always a silver lining, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you found that, and that silver lining I'm so glad that you found that time. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. I'm gonna give you the last word to the audience, and yeah, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.